This just got more difficult for the Phoenix Suns as we see Matt Ishbia and James Jones obviously wanting to make a push for a trade to get a little bit of a shakeup. But as we get recent reports and updates surrounding around Bradley Beal and the possibility of not waiving his no trade clause for a certain destination, this is hindering the possibility of Jimmy Butler even getting to the Phoenix Suns. And the Suns' obvious main goal has been acquiring that. So how this will affect Mike Budenholzer's roster post trade deadline. We'll be getting all of that and more on this episode of Suns Digest. I'm Bruce Velez with my co-host Curtis. And Curtis, how you doing, my guy? We are excited. Are you pumped up for this one?
I'm pumped up. I'm pumped up. I got a lot of thoughts on this subject, so we'll
Awesome.
have a good little discussion here, Bruce.
I'm down to dive into it. So let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Like we usually say, make sure to grab that snack. Make sure to hit that like button. Let us know your thoughts down below in the comment section as well. But Curtis, this is kind of tough, man, as we see a recent update come through about the Phoenix Suns. As we have known, the Suns have been adamant on possibly moving Bradley Beal, been trying to use that contract to get a player in Jimmy Butler, but we all know the main hindrance is that no trade clause from Bradley Beal as he gets to decide where he wants to go. But with new reports, even a report where we did a video today talking about the trade talks intensifying on a new report revealing that the Suns could possibly get Jimmy Butler in a deal where Bradley Beal would go to Chicago, the Bucks would get Zach LaVine. We got new reports from New York Times, as we see it from an article from Fred Katz, saying that there are destinations Beal would consider improving, but as The Athletic reported last week, going to a winning team would be his first priority. However, cold weather cities, including Chicago, are less attractive to him, the sources said. If a team has a losing record in a chilly winter, it will not be on Bradley Beal's list. And of course, this obviously complicates the Suns' pursuit of Butler and Curtis. This has been a discussion, obviously, all throughout the Suns media over the last couple weeks, just rampant discussion. So when you hear this, what is your initial gut reaction?
Let's start here. You know, I like to always twist the way the question comes in, right? But I'm still gonna stay on point with it. We're gonna start with the fact of I'm kind of not too mad. If the answer to the trade happening would have been us getting Jimmy, I'm not mad that it's not able to happen because we saw Jimmy just got suspended for the third time. I'm starting to get to the point where I don't know if I want that in the locker room. I don't know if I want a guy that once he's fed up, everybody's got to feel it. I don't know if I want that. If we do still end up acquiring him, hopefully he keeps it all basketball and we don't have to deal with any of that animosity, any of that backroom drama stuff that's going on. But as of right now, if this is what's going on, if Beal doesn't want to go trade and go to Chicago and we don't get Jimmy Butler, I'm perfectly fine with it.
You're perfectly fine with it. Okay, so I know that you've been also kind of in that realm. Personally, I would love for a seed to a deal to get done. I just personally think that Bradley Beal coming off the bench at this point just isn't really as valuable for the Suns making $50 million, and I do think they need those shakeups. And unfortunately, I think this just really hinders the opportunity for the Phoenix Suns. As like I mentioned, Bradley Beal is an increasingly difficult contract to trade, not only with the no trade clause, but due to the fact that he's owed $110 million over the next 2 seasons with a player option, which he's obviously going to accept, which puts these teams in these positions that are trading for him, realistically realizing that they are just trading for the contract of Bradley Beal for his offensive production as well, but are going to be stuck with that contract. And most of these teams don't want to be stuck with that contract, regardless of the draft compensation that the Phoenix Suns can attach to even get this done. But which it makes even more complicated is obviously that he would prefer to the Heat. The Heat don't want him. The Bucks, he could go to the Bucks. The Bucks would rather Zach LaVine. It just makes it everything so difficult. So Curtis, that gets into the next part here, which I honestly ask you, what now? What do the Phoenix Suns ultimately do here, man? What are the possibilities? What are the potential options? Because ultimately, with this team, they can't, since they're in the second apron, they can't aggregate salaries that much. They can't trade Bradley Beal for two or three pieces to really rebuild this roster. So are they stuck with Bradley Beal? Do they find another possible trade? What is the solution?
Well, there's two different ways to go, right? We either just I think that the Nick Richards trade changed the Suns in a way that it's fine as long as we can really get Beal to be consistent. We just talked about on our last video in the game recap that he didn't have a hot night game before that, he did have a good night, right? So if he can get consistent and really play his role properly, it wouldn't be too bad to have to keep him because the Suns are on an uptrend. Now, with that being said, the other bright side of this is the that we just saw in that report you showed that he just doesn't want to go somewhere cold and losing. So now we at least know where he wants to go. In our video we released yesterday morning, we talked about the fact that uh, the Suns haven't been giving us information. We didn't know exactly
Hmm.
what was going on with these trades. So now we at least understand where Beal wants to go, and we can start looking at options like that and start speculating and figuring out where he could go on that accord. But I like it all together. We figured out a few different things here, and the way that we go, we like I said, we keep him or we just figure out what type of team he wants to go to and try to get that done.
No, I agree. And like you said, I think the Suns definitely giving or Beal giving us that little bit of information helps because, like you mentioned, the Suns were giving us realistically no information on where Bradley Beal possibly wanted to go to any of these possible destinations. The agent and him have been very, very quiet. It's been very, very closed doors. The only thing we realistically know is that due to the fact that he is getting benched, that he could be on the market. They are gauging. They do want to add Jimmy Butler, but that's been the only like sentiment that has been said. But I do want to bring up a valid point that you did bring up because in our post game, obviously we did look at it. Bradley Beal having a struggling night, obviously in this recent performance, but in the previous performance, he had a very, very solid game, and he's had these streaky ones. And you mentioned the addition of Nick Richards, a marginal move, a move that kind of has helped out this Suns team. Even if it's been inconsistent as well, he's still been very helpful. So, do you think the Suns could use some of their other contracts around the edges to add some of these other pieces? And if they kept Beal, they could still be a quality playoff team?
I think they could. One of the things we talked about last time was the Grayson Allen deal. Like now, that's rough because Grayson just came off of a
Mm-hmm.
solid performance, dropping 18 points. So you don't know if you want to go that route, but it even like we said, even if somebody's playing good, it doesn't mean that they can't find a better home and we find a better replacement. That's still possible. So we can get Nurkic out of here. We can get Grayson Allen can move. There's a few other pieces that we have that we can move around to try to get something to happen. I mean, there's even stuff that I think we could try to add to a deal. Second apron, yeah, we can't do a 1 for 3 or something like that, but we could add something to a package and sweeten the deal for somebody else, add another player with a Beal trade and try to get something done. I don't know. There's a lot of routes we could try to go here, but I think if we keep Beal. And he gets comfortable, and maybe we get one other piece. Honestly, just one other piece, we could make a solid run. I think so.
I think so too, and I think that main piece that you're kind of talking about as well as that backup center, because in that last game we saw Nick Richards get into some foul trouble, and we've seen him consistently get into this trouble, and they've had to use Mason Plumlee, who has been solid at some points, but I don't think necessarily is reliable as much as fans like around the league would obviously expect. And going into the playoffs, you're going to want a little bit of a better big. And with Nurkic still being on the roster, that still hurts because he's not playing. But if they can move off a contract like Nurkic, or unfortunately, he might have to move off a contract like Grayson to get another backup center, I think that definitely helps them in addressing a little bit more of those front court issues. And once again, would help them in just being stronger in that ability to then, again, rise up these rankings as we've seen over these last couple of games. Because with this new revamped roster, with Nick Richards, with this new team, they have been very, very effective so far.
I wonder how Nick and Nurk would play together. That maybe that's something that we could see when Nurkic does get to touch the floor again if he's not moved. Maybe those two together turn into a dynamic duo that we're not expecting. Maybe that's going to catapult us up. I mean, there's so much to be seen. We still have a couple weeks left before the trade deadline, so there's things that can happen. We could either be stuck with Nick Richards and see if he plays well alongside Nick Richards, or we do the move and we get something else going. I mean, I think in general when we talk about moving Mason, not Mason, when we talk about moving Grayson Allen, if we do go that route, I mean, in that deal, we'd have to get rid of Nurkic because going Grayson Allen for a big and still having Nurkic's contract, having him down there, it just doesn't make any sense. So we'd have to find a deal where we could get them both off if we do want to move Grayson. But I think Nurk is the first thing that we need to look at. And this is all in the scenario that we keep Beal. This is all in the
Yes.
scenario that we keep Beal.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios, a lot of different discussions, a lot of different breakdowns, but ultimately, Suns fans, we want to know what you think down below. So let us know how you guys ultimately feel. Like I said, Bradley Beal potentially, obviously, not going to Chicago, as he says that he will not waive his no trade clause to go there. But like Curtis said, we get a little bit of information with this as well. We find out that Bradley Beal would like to go to a place that has a winning record and isn't in chilly weather. So obviously, limits it to a certain degree, but we'll have to dive in, try to figure out some deals, maybe look at some trade proposals, and get some stuff going out for you guys as well. But we want to know your thoughts. Like I said, do you think Bradley Beal will get traded? Do you think he'll be on this Suns team heading into after the deadline? I want to know your thoughts. Like I said, Curtis and I have been thankful for all your guys' support on the channel, leaving the comments, leaving the likes, doing all your guys' support. So thank you so much. But we'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day and go Phoenix Suns.